Hello and welcome to Conservation Conversation. Autumn has hit us with a bomb and we can't make any more videos about Himalayan balsam. Firstly though, I'd like to apologise for wearing sunglasses in the video. I've got a nasty black eye. And if you want to find out how that happened, you'll have to stay right to the end and watch our newest feature, which is called
Production Insights.
But first up is my interview with Dr. Josh Lynn from the University of Manchester. He's going to tell you why I'm talking to him about change. But first, I'm telling him about my amazing interview with my nan. So, I'm making an episode because I worry about change all the time. The first interview in the episode was with my nan, who's in her 90s now, and she was evacuated during World War II. I asked her lots of questions about change, and she told me lots of interesting things. One of the things that she said, which really took me back, was that one of the biggest changes in her life was fridges.
Yeah.
That food was cold. And washing machines, that her mum didn't have to spend an entire day doing the washing. She could just put it in the machine. I, and a lot of people, I think, worry about the way the world is changing. Why might I be asking you about change?
Oh, because I'm a global change ecologist. So I study how various global changes like nutrient deposition, acid deposition, climate change, rising CO2 levels in the atmosphere, deforestation, habitat loss, how those different changes that we've seen in the past 100, 150 years and more, how that alters ecological phenomenon.
Well, I've come to the right guy then, I think. So, global change ecologist. Sounds really big, that. And climate change is only one part of that, right?
Yeah.
So we'll break that down, if you don't mind, bit by bit. One accusation that certain people, climate change deniers might say, is that doesn't the world just always change? Is that what you study? Do you study prehistory, or what do you look at?
Oh, I study modern kind of anthropogenic driven climate change. So, and how that's affecting ecological systems.
Right.
So if people say, yes, has the climate always changed? Of course it has, but not at this rate. That's the thing that's most scary about this, is that the rate at which we're changing the chemistry of the atmosphere, increasing the amount of CO2 in it, which we know you can do very simple experiments showing that it traps heat. It's changing our climate completely. And so
we're coming after another summer up here in the northwest of England. This one's been dry and pretty hot, right? What have you seen in your local area that's sort of, demonstrated that? Would you call it another weird summer for the UK?
Yeah, it was quite odd. I mean, like you said, very warm, very dry. If you just wander around, especially we're doing this in late August, this interview, it seems like fall is already here, a month early. And a lot of that is due to the really dry late summer as well as the really dry early summer.
Right.
A lot of the trees have given up on the season of photosynthesizing, and they're just kind of dropping their leaves.
Yeah.
You probably also noticed, I noticed especially with the cherry trees this year,
Right.
the leaves looked really unhappy. They were all drooping and folded up, trying to not take in as much solar radiation because they couldn't deal with the heat and the drought.
Okay.
That was going on this summer, it seemed like.
I think it's always important to look at your local area and get to know what's changing there. I presume your studies take you further afield. But let's start at the beginning. You don't sound like you're from Glossop, Josh. Where are you from?
No, I'm from a small farming town, Peru, New York, in upstate New York, close to the border between the US and Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm told that part of the world is beautiful and very lush and green, is that right?
It is. I was right on the edge of the Adirondack Mountains, so spent all my time growing up, running around the mountains there, biking, hiking, things like that, yeah.
So, did you grow up an outdoorsy kind of guy, or what brought you to be an ecologist?
Oh, it's a somewhat interesting story. I'm a first generation college student, so I didn't really know, or university student, so I didn't really know what kind of careers are out there if you went and got a degree in something. I thought I'd become a medical doctor when I first went to university, but I spent half a semester there, saw this lecture by someone who I would end up working with later on, a professor I would end up working with, on invasive species actually, and how their the country of origin, the kind of floristic region of origin, kind of influences where they end up invading in their invasive range.
Oh, interesting. Right.
It blew my mind. I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't know you could study plants and these kind of interesting evolutionary and ecological questions at such a grand scale. I didn't know you could do ecology. I didn't know that was a subject
Right, yeah.
going into university. And I basically immediately signed up to do that instead.
Crazy that the beginning of your studies was an invasive species lecture, because that actually isn't why I reached out to you in the first place. It was your background in ecology change that I was interested in. But since you bring it up, there's some Himalayan balsam right at the end of its season now. So you and I aren't going to balsam bash, lucky you. But it's changed this year. I spoke to a couple of other people who've seen it. It really wilted in this dry weather. It's adapted here. So, in fact, so I was told by a colleague of yours, Dr. Henry Burt, because it loves these wet conditions, you know, and thrives in really wet conditions, which the northwest of the UK, pretty wet place.
Yeah.
The whole of the UK, pretty wet place. And this year, I don't know, maybe it's had a bit of a struggle, actually. I wonder if it will be as prolific next year. Do you think it hooks people in? What is it about invasive species that sort of opened your eyes to begin with?
To me, it was very theoretical. It was this idea that this species can have this entire evolutionary history adapting to its particular climate, the soil conditions within this region, kind of the type of dispersal mechanisms and the enemies that it might have, like herbivores and competitors around the area. They can have this deep, rich evolutionary history that's shaped the traits that it has that are somehow completely adapted to this whole other region with new competitors, new herbivores, new climate, new soil conditions.
Right.
And yet, you know, kind of take over and really outcompete all the other species around. It's just a really fascinating ecological question.
I really haven't thought about it that way, actually, but it's a marvel, isn't it? I did hear a few weeks ago from a man called Alex at the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust that some of the people who've been to the Himalayan region to study this plant, it's a bit of a trek to get there because it doesn't actually thrive too well, you know? And yet here, if left untouched, it seems like it would just do everything, take every bit of land. That's cool. I get a new appreciation for it every time I speak to somebody. It really is an amazing plant, isn't it? So what do you study at the moment then, Josh? What are you working on right now?
My research kind of takes two themes. One is plant-herbivore interactions and how that changes with global change. So looking at how much do plants get eaten with increasing temperatures, increasing CO2 in the atmosphere, and how that changes plant chemistry, and then the interactions between insect herbivores and the plant. As well as species geographic ranges is the other thing I do. So all species have a particular part of the world that they inhabit.
Yeah.
And we obviously expect that to change with climate change because we've hypothesized and generally supported that a species' geographic range is largely limited by climate. So as the climate changes, we expect them to move across the world.
Are you talking flora and fauna here, or what do you focus on particularly?
Yeah, all biota will change. I mostly focus on flora, so I'm a plant biologist as well.
Okay. And what, is there any specific examples that you've got of studies that you've done that have sort of shown this in action already?
Studies I've done that have shown this in action. A big one is trying to test the mechanisms that might shape a species' ability to shift their range.
Right.
Or how they'll be forced to shift their range with climate change. What we know much less about is how novel biotic interactions will additionally shape a species' range. So I've done some work in the Colorado Rockies where we did this experiment where we took alpine restricted plants.
Right.
They only occur on the tops of the mountains. That's the climate that they're adapted to. And so with climate change, it stands to reason they have nowhere to go. If it warms up, they're going to go extinct from the top of the mountains. So we were interested if they can handle a warmer climate, as well as if they can handle the new biotic interactions, the interactions with other organisms that might move upslope as well with climate change. And so for this, we did some experiments transplanting those alpine species to lower elevations and exposing them to the herbivores that we find down there, specifically elk, moose, deer, kind of grazing mammals. And the results suggest that they've struggled with it. It's much harder for them to to survive and maintain positive population growth rates, which you need to not go extinct. You need to have your populations growing or at least staying stable with those novel biotic interactions. So it suggests that there's a small negative effect of the warming climate, but it compounds with that extra hit of having that higher rate of herbivory and more disturbance from those herbivores.
What was that word there? Higher rate of?
Herbivory.
Herbivory being?
Yeah. So that's the rate at which plants get eaten by herbivores. So insects, mammals, whatever eats plants.
I learn at least one new word every week and I like that, herbivory. Yeah, very nice. I think of extinction and what, I think of rhinos and things like that. I very rarely think of plants. But perhaps you don't know, but are there plants going extinct as a result of climate change already?
It's very difficult to say when a plant goes extinct. I think,
right,
yeah. Because it's, we're sitting amongst, thousands of individuals of plants, right? And so to say definitively that you found all 1,000 species or, however millions of individuals for a potential plant extinct.
Yeah.
I'm sure there probably are some documented cases. I don't know any off the top of my head, but they're rare. But we fear that they will be accelerating in the future. We're kind of just at the tip of climate change having its ecological effects. We started doing experiments to test how it changes plant communities 35 to 40 years ago, when the first experiments were kind of put forward. And now we're seeing that the climate change has almost exceeded some of those first experiments.
Really?
What we were suggesting, yeah. Or it's getting close to it.
Sure.
And so
yeah,
it's still to be determined, but every model predicts it. A lot of our experiments predict it. So it's likely to happen even if it lags. It takes a long time for it to kind of materialize those extinctions.
And do you think people appreciate how many people like yourself are trying to educate and make those changes and do the science? Do you think people understand quite how many people are trying to do that?
Probably not.
I don't think so. That's a leading question, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough appreciation of the thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world, right?
Yeah, and I'd say, as a member of the public as well as being a scientist. Like
you're a civilian too.
Yeah, as it turns out, I'm a citizen of.
You're a normal guy.
Yep.
Settle down. It's all right. Sorry, go on, Josh.
And yeah, it does seem like there is a general kind of decline in an appreciation for expertise and how somebody cultivates a deep understanding of a subject.
Yeah.
And how that lends themselves to be able to, say something more authoritatively about the subject, or make better predictions and guide how we should probably think about a problem.
Given your work that you're doing, are you optimistic, or are you generally worried, or do you try to remain neutral as a scientist?
I think I try to stay neutral, especially for like when I'm coming to a question. Because there might be, I try to keep what I want the answer to be out from what the data will tell us, right? So you're trying to stay kind of agnostic to what the answer is going to be of the questions you're asking.
Yeah.
And just dutifully collect the data, design your experiments to try to keep that bias away, and then, analyze the data as it comes. But then, like we just said, I'm also a citizen and a civilian. And so, I do have kind of negative perceptions of where things are going and where, society and politics are going on these issues of habitat destruction and climate change.
I've heard that, though, that there can be a negativity bias in science. People are inspired to, are you inspired to work amongst climate and ecology because it's something you believe in and are passionate about, or do you just do it totally dispassionately?
To be like, I'm most driven actually by the questions.
Okay.
So I find them to be, it really kind of goes back to that lecture in university, that first semester. I saw something that kind of lit up my mind. I got really interested in the questions. And I kind of bring this global change lens to the work that I do because it's an important what global change does is it changes the environmental conditions that are important for understanding ecological process and phenomena.
Yeah.
So not only is the work that I'm doing useful, it's also very theoretically and kind of on the basic research level, very interesting to understand these questions. I would say. Yeah.
That's a really inspiring answer to me, because a lot of this stuff can be politically twisted. It can be a really hot button issue that gets people wound up. But we're talking about a natural environment here. I mean, look at this. This is a tiny little corner of Glossop, and it's so beautiful to me, with there's blackberries within reach and all of that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And just asking yourself questions, not even as a scientist, but as a citizen, about nature. I think, what could be more worthwhile, really? Mm-hmm. It's a net benefit to yourself regardless, isn't it, really? So that's a really inspiring answer. I appreciate that one, Josh. Really appreciate that.
And I'll also say, like, that sort of basic research and following something that's not maybe directly applicable at the moment, what we tend to find throughout the history of science is that those little new discoveries almost always end up in something completely new or novel down the line. It might inspire new research in a particularly applied direction, or it might itself become part of some, grander theory about how nature works in some way that, even if it's not directly motivated by some political or societal need, it's still valuable. Basic research is still fundamental to our understanding of nature, and so we need to keep doing it.
It's there forever.
Yeah.
It's there for everybody else who wants to have a look at it. Is there any of your particular studies that you've got sort of high hopes for? Someone down the line might look at and think, wow, that was the one that got me. Or I could phrase that differently. What's your favourite of the papers or studies that you've conducted?
That's a tough one.
Is it?
They're all your darlings in some manner.
Yeah.
There's some where I propose some models to predict how species respond to climate change based on the climate that they inhabit across the world.
Yeah.
I really like that kind of model that I worked on.
Cool.
Where it's really about kind of trying to define and think about what causes a species to respond to a climate change based on its internal preferences or its evolved characteristics for a particular climate. Trying to glean that information from its geographic range. So the major findings from that paper are, when you warm a chunk of earth that you've moved to a new climate,
right?
It's called a turf transplant experiment. You dig up a turf of grass, move it to a warmer climate, and see how the plants change.
Right.
When you do that, species with warmer distributions that are more, if you're in the northern hemisphere, southernly distributed, do better. So it's a really simple model. It can be used in conservation applications, management scenarios. And it does a pretty good job at predicting how a community will change with climate change.
I think even I can get my head around that. That's pretty good. I like that one. Yeah, that's a really good example. Thanks, Josh. We'll be back after this advert.
This programme is brought to you by Genuinely Beneficial Products. This week.
Puns!
Genuinely Beneficial Products.
Thanks, Genuinely Beneficial Product. Now we're going over to Glossop, where I'm talking to Josh about how I messed up our first interview. Okay, I'm just going to pour myself another tea. I'm really glad we did this again, Josh. I felt quite bad that I didn't ask you enough about what you do last time, and I'm glad that we've done that now.
I think what I do is less interesting than the field generally. I'm one small piece.
Well, that's very humble of you to say. I find your view especially interesting. It gives me a bit of heart to know that it's sort of as removed from the political motivation as you can get, and it feels like you might operate in a place where the negativity bias is as absent as it can be, because change is change, and it's going to happen in certain ways, and we really need to understand why. That's what I take from looking at your work. I think that's kind of genuinely how I think about it. It really is just kind of
I'm interested in the questions. So I'm going to try to do my best to address them, and I'm glad that it has some further, purpose, or some further utility. But generally, it's just I'm following what I find interesting. Yeah.
From a different perspective, I empathise with you on that one. Excuse me, I'm going to do this clap. Did I get that? That was a really bad clap. That's better. It does feel to me, I'm in my mid to late 30s, does feel like my lifetime is going to see some pretty seismic changes. Do you think I'm right about that?
I think so. As you were saying, this summer is a potential example of that. I mean, it could get more extreme than this summer even. Longer droughts, harsher heat waves.
Yeah, and that, I presume, is not just your opinion.
No,
that comes from your work.
That's straight from the ICCP reports. The extremes are what we're really kind of focusing on now. Is that we're going to see a lot more of these extreme droughts, extreme heat waves, even some extreme cold, because it just causes more volatility in the climate.
And these are problems that stack as well. It's talk about the change in season. I'm not sure that many leaves should be falling in August. I'm not an ecologist, what do I know? Feels autumny, doesn't it, man?
It's pretty early, yeah.
Hey, the changes in the trees up where you're from, I've seen a little bit when the reds start coming in. That's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It's amazing. Autumn in your part of the world is fantastic.
It is. We call them tree peepers when people come around and just drive to look at the trees. Yeah.
Yep, I've tree peeped.
Yep.
What would you say to young people who might want to get into a field like yours? Are there jobs? Is there opportunities out there?
Yeah, there's lots of jobs and opportunities. I'd say, so you can always be a scientist. It's a hard road, but it's a road that, many people go down.
Yeah.
Then I really think what we need is more kind of non-governmental groups and political action towards working towards these problems. Figuring out what regulations we need, what policies we need to kind of innovate and regulate our way out of the massive amounts of carbon emissions that we're making, the types of management regimes we're employing to work with forestry and upland farming, things like that, other farm systems, agriculture. Trying to think about ways that we can do that to reduce our carbon footprint and try to reverse a lot of the habitat destruction that we've performed over the past all of human history. Thinking about that is where I really think we need a lot of critical mass, and that includes having some sort of background in policy as well as having a scientific background, understanding what the problems are and what the effects of these different environmental changes, global changes are to our well-being.
We're not in this location by accident, this very spot that we're sitting right here. There's some allotments right next to us, which I believe you have a stake in, is that right?
Yeah, I shared an allotment plot with a friend. Yeah.
Nice. How did that come to be?
They were sharing it with somebody else, and that person left, so they asked me if I wanted to join in. Yeah.
Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I do. It's a lot of work, but it's rewarding to get 10 kilos of potatoes in a go.
Yeah, you got 10 kilos.
I'm just judging off of my own strength, but I think it was probably around that, yeah.
I picked my potatoes from the garden up with like one hand this year. I think a kilo would be generous. What do you think? 10 potatoes.
It's not bad.
That's about 10, that's roughly 10 kilos, right? Yeah. It is a great thing. I'm fascinated by allotments. Was that something you grew up doing, gardening, allotments, anything like that?
No, we have allotments in the US, but a lot of it is just kind of gardening in your own little patch of land.
Yeah. How about personally, in your family?
Personally, my mom was a huge gardener.
Okay, lovely.
Which I think is some of where the love of plants came from, but I never helped out too much. Did some of the heavy lifting, but
right.
Outside of that, it wasn't a huge thing growing up actually for me.
So you're not one of these dyed-in-the-wool, hippie family, environmental types?
No. Come from more of a working class background. So my dad worked for a postage delivery company. My mom is a bookkeeper for various companies.
Cool.
Was a bookkeeper. Not so much hippie-ish and whatnot, but
right. I think the point I'm trying to get is that anyone can get into this,
Yeah.
and once you've got the bug, I do think you have the bug after that, right?
yeah.
I mean, I only have a few questions left, actually, Josh. One of those, I forgot to prepare you ahead of time one more time. I can't remember if you remember what you said, but I do like to ask everybody their conservation sin.
Conservation sins.
The thing that they do wrong. But I'll confess mine first. Executive producer wife and I went on holiday recently, and we get our milk delivered in a glass bottle, which I think reduces plastic. We messed it all up, and we had to buy a few plastic bottles of milk. Sorry about that, you know, but we'll do better next time. If you had to pick something, what would your conservation sin be? None of us are perfect. I'm not trying to put the spot on you here, but you know.
No, I think it's worth admitting the things that you could do better. My bad one is probably taking too long of hot showers.
Okay.
I like a long shower now.
Yeah, I like a long shower as well. But this is a lovely spot, and I'm really grateful for you inviting me up here.
Thanks for coming.
I'm gonna have a nosy at the allotments on the way out. They look really, there's some amazing sunflowers down there actually. I've got to get a shot of those.
Just don't look at my plot.
I wouldn't judge the amount of failures we've had in our garden. I would not judge you whatsoever. I struggled to grow anything for the first couple of years, but we did get a kilo of potatoes this year, you know, so well done us. I'm very grateful for Josh's time during that interview, and I think we should all appreciate scientists like Josh a bit more. Now some quick recommendations for you. There's 2 books of the week this week. The first one is The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. When this came out in the 90s, it was nominated for all sorts of awards, and it's set in the year 2025 when society is collapsing and everything is on fire. Imagine that. Most importantly, it's about change. And the second book of the week this week is A Short History of the World According to Sheep by Sally Coulthard. Very few species have experienced as much change as sheep, and this book delves into the history of that as well as how sheep have changed civilization. The YouTube channel of the week is Simon Clark. Simon is where you go for your climate science, folks. He's the best. And the playlist for the week is SMTP Anthropocene. Find that on Spotify. And now it's time for our newest feature.
Production Insights.
Right, these are the ones we've got here, sent in by you guys. Zoom F2 recorder we covered a couple of weeks ago. This is the recorder that went in the water. This is a Zoom F2. Well done to those guys, because you are listening to me on it now. It is recording. Alessandro sent the next one in the short social media post of my Nan and Josh that I made in the week. The titles were really badly justified, so sorry Alessandro, we'll work on that. As I mentioned in the middle, my interview with Josh had to be done twice because I messed up the sound the first time round. This is what it sounded like. Bad. Thank you, Josh, for being so generous with your time. And finally, if you stay to the end, you get to find out about my black eye. At work this week, I was using a piece of kit called the Easy Rig. It goes over your head and holds the camera with a kind of counterweight. But fair warning, if you are using that counterweight and you've just eaten a plate of chips and your hands are a bit greasy and it slips out of your hand, it can hit you in the face with the force of 1,000 suns. Watch out, there's probably something on the label, but you know, that's it. That's all we've got time for this week. See you next week.